Bye now. All right, now I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. All right. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, cool. All right, so maybe Pete will start off with your projects. So we've got two lined up here.
All right.
So I might just go to your tree project that you've been lighting, which is coming along really nicely. I might just flip back and forth between the previous and the latest iteration. I see the biggest changes that you've, I guess, flipped the image plane because I understand you're using
Yeah.
a map painting for the background to sort of
Mhm.
save on computing resources, which is a very, very good move. It's always nice to sort of minimize what you have, just so you can iterate faster. Um, so I see that you've got the key direction sort of lining up with the map painting,
Yep.
and it looks pretty good. Um, my only comment would be that the highlights in the reference feel a little bit warmer than what you have in your scene. So I feel like the
Okay.
highlights in your scene are, I guess, a little bit green. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking maybe you could swing the key light um, a little bit warmer, a little bit more towards sort of, you know, yellow, amber.
Okay.
Just a smidge.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go too much. Um,
Something I was thinking about and I wanted to run by you was I'm also looking at adding like a mist over the water. So using more like
yes.
actual smoke, like a
Mm,
smoke simulation,
yep.
and then lighten the opacity of that to maybe like, you know, 0.1 or something, just to give the hint of the smoke.
Yep. That sounds like a great idea. I think you should definitely try that. I think it'd definitely
Okay.
enhance the image. Um, let's see. So your highlights need to be probably a little bit warmer.
Okay.
Um, your midtones are looking prob. I think you could swing it a little bit warmer too in the midtones, um, and the shadows are actually pretty much on point to
Okay.
me. So yeah, swing the highlights and the midtones more towards like a warmer hue, and then let's see what you get with the mist, the introduction of the mist. I'm guessing that we'd get more sense of depth with the introduction of the mist.
Okay.
But
What do you think about that backplate?
it does uh, look like it's, it's got that sort of rear projection look because it is a little bit defocused compared to the reference. And let me just get my little paintbrush here. And this area here in particular, this kind of contrast between the shadow um, of the kind of tree root or tree trunk
Mhm.
elements and the background there, it feels that's probably the area that feels most, uh, you know, taking you away from this kind of linking the background with the foreground. I feel like areas here are really good because I feel like I'm guessing these grass elements are CG, yeah? I mean, the foreground
Yeah,
elements anyway.
those are CG.
Yep,
If you look really close, that blue highlight is actually CG. Yeah, right there.
right there.
Yep.
Yep, okay. And what about this
So
tree? This tree in the background
that
here?
that tree is part of the backdrop.
Okay, yeah, so areas here look great. Like it's quite a sort of seamless blend, and you've got the depth cue, the atmo kind of grading off really nicely. Uh, when we get to here, it's
So just kind of do like a vignette over that part.
yeah. Or if you've got like some kind of element that's similar to this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering whether you could just, or even that same elements. I'm wondering whether you could just kind of uh,
Bump it over a little.
yeah, bump it over,
Yeah.
and then and with the background plates, um, try and find here we go, my blend tool. Just going to darken the back plate as well, just so that we kind of get a sense of continuity between the foreground and
Right.
backgrounds.
Okay. Kind of like how it is in the reference there.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, in the reference
Okay.
there, they have, there's some bushes there. Um, and then the backdrop is a little bit darker as well. So,
Yeah, I could do like a quick gradient over that or something.
yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, like a quick grad over that just to kind of like blend it in a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe looking at on look, second thoughts about the darks and the shadow areas. I'm wondering whether you could, particularly on the tree trunk here, get the shadows
Yeah.
to look a little bit, a little bit darker here.
And that's mostly from the volumetrics, and I'm still playing with those.
Yeah, yeah. So just if the volumetrics are affecting that, just kind of back off on it a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
just where the tree
Okay.
is. Yeah, like that. Other than that, it's looking pretty good. I'm liking it.
I appreciate it.
All right. Yeah. So looking forward to the next iteration. Um, and next project, you've been working on this kind of streetscape, and I see
Mm-hmm.
that you've been iterating on this quite a bit, and this is your latest version, which
Yeah.
feels like it's closer to the reference than the previous one. So I see that you know you've got you've been working on sort of articulating the bananas, um, but the overall um, hue of the image feels like it's closer to the reference. You've got like a warmer key lights and a warmer bloom over the building there, which definitely helps. Yeah, if anything, I would maybe go a little bit warmer in the midtones. Um,
Okay.
it feels like if you look at this white area here in shadow versus say here, I feel like there's
Maybe
still
there's a little bit more red in there.
I feel like there's a little bit more blue um, on this edge anyway.
Oh yeah. Okay.
This you see the blue
Yeah.
versus say here, and they're both in shadow. Um, the areas that are lit in the sunlight feel pretty good. Like the ground there feels pretty nice. Um, so I'm wondering whether if it's feeling a little bit blue in the fill, whether you could tweak your IBL to make it just a tad warmer, because I feel
Okay.
like your key light here, it's reading nice and you know nice and warm. Um, so I would, yeah, maybe take a look at the what's contributing to the fill and maybe warm it up a little bit.
Okay.
Um,
And I'm pretty sure that's coming from the HDR
yep, the
from
HDR.
the sky.
Yep, exactly. So take a look at your sky HDR and see, maybe do a few tests and try and bring in some warmer hues.
Okay.
The blooming of
Sounds good.
yeah, yeah. The blooming of the sky. I see that um, compared to I think maybe it was two versions back. You had it quite blue,
Yeah.
and I see now that you've matched it closer to the reference where it's sort of blooming and
Yeah, I
overexposed.
was trying to not put too much bloom right there
Mm,
because doing the bloom like the reference
yep,
pretty much like totally ruined the top portion of the building.
I see. Yeah, yep. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the way you've got it there. It looks like
Okay.
you can still make out the detail in the buildings without it sort of um, blooming out.
Yeah, and I had to roto out the overhang right above the door in the middle. I had to roto that uh, the one right above the bananas. So I had to roto that out
Okay.
and basically do a bloom for the sky.
Yep.
So I got, over the buildings and everything.
Mm,
And then I did a second bloom so I could control it over that uh, patio entrance or the main entrance.
yep. No, it's yeah, it's looking pretty cool. Alrighty. All right. Well, thanks for showing your work. It's coming along really nicely. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the critique.
Cheers. Okay, so maybe we'll move to Miguel. Hey, Miguel, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
Good, good. So I see you've submitted this reindeer image and a couple of
Yes.
reference images. Um, yeah,
Yes.
some really nice references that you've kind of posted up. I'm really liking. I really like the the way the key light hits the deer here. It's got it's really giving them a really nice shape. And I'm guessing you've chosen this for the colors, or is it
Yeah.
more
For
so?
the
Yeah.
the snow in the back. Yeah, we're in the. I like the color for the blue
Yeah,
that comes out in there. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm really liking, this kind of color palette that you've picked out here with the snow, the sort of the bluish purple um, hue of the parts of the snow that are in shadow, and then these sort of very warm, these sort of warm highlights, on the snowflake. That's really nice. And I see that you've made a start with your
Yes.
reindeer. Yeah, so it's a good start. You've got you've got your warm key hitting the reindeer. I'm wondering whether you could try using um, some sort of blocker or some kind of element here to, because with snow you get a lot of bounce,
Okay.
and what it tends to do is it tends to make the fill areas here quite quite bright, and I guess a good way to try to adjust the fill areas is to introduce some kind of blocking element. It could just be like just a plain piece of geo that's like rectangular in shape, and then
Yeah. Okay.
kind of maybe test moving it around where the fill area of the reindeer is. To I guess the idea is to try and where are we? Okay, just to get those fill areas to kind of read a bit better. And I guess we're looking at two different environments. We're looking at this kind of grassy environment where the light would get absorbed by the grass and the soil, and so you're able to get this really nice fall off. Um, right here. Whereas here we don't have the luxury of, or we don't have that soil component to absorb the light, so that's why it's reading a little bit blown out, I guess. So
Okay.
yeah, so try putting a blocker in to get some more shaping in it. And as far as where the light hitting the reindeer is, I'm wondering whether you could take another look at the reference and perhaps think about just make another layer. Just think about where the key is falling and how that really draws the eye to the reindeers, and whether you could perhaps try and maybe do something similar here where the keys
Okay. So make it a little tighter.
exactly, yeah. So
Okay.
make it a little tighter, and then it gives you the opportunity to maybe get this quality in the foreground here with the snow. So you see how we get these beautiful, bluish and purple hues in the snow. wondering whether
Okay.
I'm wondering whether you could, are you able to manipulate the geometry of the ground here?
To a certain extent, yes.
I'm wondering whether you could maybe kick it up so that it's a little bit higher in the foreground here.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So get it a little bit higher so it's almost like um, the area where the reindeer is standing is lower. So this, you know, this level here is lower than, say, these points here on the foreground. And then what you'll get is that you'll get these nice little highlight kicks, you know, here in the snow. Obviously the geometry is a little bit simplified in your scene, but I feel like having this. Let me just quickly try and illustrate with Photoshop. Is that working? So you get sort of the kind of more bluish hues in the foreground, and then you'll have the key in the middle grounds, which would be, let me just take this off. Drawn on this. So the middle ground will be nice and, I guess, nice and warm in comparison. So something like that. Does that make sense? Just so you
Okay.
get, you kind of draw the eye through color contrast.
Okay. So bump up the values of the actual sun too. So it's looking a little pale on mine, the original.
Yeah, definitely. I'd kick it up.
Okay.
Just kick it up to where it's like ridiculously overexposed, and then
okay.
and then kind of work back from there. Because
Okay.
I know in the reference it's not that blown out, but just for yourself, just see what you get when you know, just go a little bit nuts with the exposure. See what you get, and then
Okay.
and then just kind of work back from there.
All right. The blue, should I make it more blue, like more contrasty on the overall blue, or just the front,
I would,
like the front? Yeah.
yeah, I would just see how you go. See, my intuition is that, you know, just working the blue in the foreground would give you that kind of contrast in color latitude. So you have this blue that sits next to the yellow, so that acts to kind of draw the eye. And
Oh, okay.
maybe that's enough. I think if you went super contrasty, super blue and saturated in the background as well, um, it might just flatten it out. So
That's true. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe just the foreground, and then I would also try bringing it down. See what happens. Bring the exposure down a little bit too. Okay.
Okay. To the front blue or to the overall
Just to
scene?
the front.
To the front. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. But also be mindful of
Okay.
this, the saturation.
So like it's in kind of like in the something's blocking it, the entirety of that front part in shadow. Okay. I'll see how I can manipulate the geometry to a certain extent and see if I can do like in the snowflake picture and bring it up some.
Yeah, I know what you just mentioned about, um, this something casting a shadow on it. Maybe you can you could try a gobo, like a tree gobo, or, something, like a tree element that you see here in the background. Try moving it behind the camera so that it's casting casting a shadow onto this area here, because then you kind of justify it being a little bit darker. Does that make sense? So, so you know how you've got some trees in the background here, like some, I don't know, fir trees or whatever. Try duplicating it and then bringing it so that the tree is casting a shadow, like, so the tree, say, it's, like that, but it's, obviously further back behind camera, and it casts a shadow onto the ground there, so that you you can justify darkening it. Does that make sense? So you've got, so your sun's here, you got a tree, and then the tree occludes the sunlight, and then um, you have a shadow cast. Is that making sense at all, or I guess I'm just trying to find. Oh,
Oh,
hello.
There he is.
Sorry,
there you go.
my signal cut out. Um, so where were we? Oh,
I,
we were talking about the shadow, the darker foreground,
yes.
and I was wondering because you mentioned something before, and um, it made a lot of sense. So this idea that we contrive a shadow or justify a shadow by bringing a tree like you've got here in the background.
Oh,
Um,
you're not showing a stream, so I can't really see anything.
oh, sorry. Let me just share screen again. Sorry about that. How's that?
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Got it.
great. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm wondering whether to contrive or to justify a shadow in the foreground here, you could duplicate one of these trees in the back, bring it around so that it's casting a shadow onto the ground, so it looks like a tree shadow.
Yeah, okay.
And then we've got license to kind of make this area darker in the foreground. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. So the tree's not going to be seen, but it's just going to cast a shadow.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just out of frame, possibly behind camera, or very, towards screen right, out of frame.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. All right. Thanks for that, Miguel.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. So I might just go to the rest of the submissions and just go through them real quick. Um, you're welcome to stay or leave if you like, but I might
No,
just.
no, no, I'll
Okay.
watch. Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. All right. So Apex Ghost Town. We've got um, we've got your latest version now, and it feels like it's kind of come back to the way it was in the first iteration, in that it feels very flat and kind of foggy. And I suspect that I may have steered you in the wrong direction by getting you to swing it to screen left, towards screen left. Um, and I feel like what you had is probably nicer. So I apologize for that. That's my bad. Um, but I'm feeling like we've lost some of that contrast that we had in this iteration. Just looking really nice. So, you know, um, this area here on his chest, we've kind of lost. And I'm wondering whether you could swing it back to where it was. I guess my suggestion was to do with trying to get a little bit more um, contrast in the key to fill ratio. So the idea was that, you know, um, with this being bright, maybe we could grad off. We could grad off, um, this bit a little bit more. Let's see whether it's working. Yeah. So that was, I guess, what informed my suggestion to kind of swing it around a bit more. But perhaps what you could do instead is bring down whatever source you're using for your fill, whether it be an HDR, RVL, or like a fill light. Maybe bring that down so that we read the key a bit more, so that we're reading this a bit more. And I'm wondering also if it's possible, whether you could, maybe it's just a matter of tweaking the shaders, but maybe to these highlights here are quite distracting, and the thing about the contrast that they create in the beak areas and the underside is that it draws the eye to these areas here where you kind of don't want it to. You want to draw the eye to, I guess, more here and possibly the top side of the beak. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that if you could maybe get the contrast to come around here rather than down here, that'd be awesome. So I'm just going to go back to your latest version now. So in terms of because I know you inquired about the composition, there's this, I guess, this composition rule called the rule of thirds, where it's mainly a photographic. It's coming from photography, I guess. But this idea that if you frame things where it lines up on the grid of thirds, then compositionally it's more compelling. It's not kind of like a hard and fast rule, and you don't have to obey it, but it's kind of a good guide, and I tend to like using it. So in terms of composition, if you try something like this, where the eye sits on, where one of those grid lines kind of intersect, matching that up with the eyeball, that could be a good way to go. And generally, I feel like we're losing contrast here, and whatever element that was kind of informing that atmosphere in your scene, maybe remove it for the foreground. It might be fine for the background, but I feel like this kind of blooming in the foreground is detracting from your scene. And the previous version that you've had is probably the best one you've got yet, so I would revert back to that version and take it from there. Okay, thank you. Forum Thaker, you're pretty much there. I see that you've sent a few versions since the last time I had a look at it, and the top light, I see that you've sort of wound it back. And arrived at this point here, which is, I think, the closest you've come to the reference. And yeah, I would go for this latest version rather than this one. I still feel that this one, the shadows need a little bit more fill, whereas this one is, I feel like you're on the money here in terms of key light direction and fill level. Okay, so I think you're done. Well done. Now you've done a ton of work sort of iterating, and I appreciate the work that you've put in trying to refine it, but I think you've got it in a really good spot. Thank you. Ben, it's looking pretty cool, man. Let's go through your versions. So this is your initial version, and I guess after I took a look at it, you've added or played with the spec and trying to get it. I've flipped the reference just so the pose is kind of similar to what you've got. I see that you've been working on the spec and getting the fill to match the reference. And I feel like with each iteration you're getting closer. I feel like with the latest version that you have, there's something, I feel like in these areas here, I'm not sure whether that's working as well as what you have here. Perhaps it's gone a little bit too dark and a little bit too warm compared to the previous versions. It could be that you need to lift the key some more. So let's try that. So it feels like the key could come up on the side. Sorry, what did I just do? Okay. Okay. Something like that. Just because I feel that with this latest iteration, the key and the fill are starting to feel too similar. Sorry, the wrong tool. You know, these areas here. So if we work towards getting, lifting the key a bit more, I think you should be in a pretty good spot. I know the shape of their face is quite different, and that probably explains why we have why we have the snout sort of reading most prominently in terms of the key light hitting him. But I'm wondering whether you could cheat in another light. That what you could do is duplicate the key and then maybe get it to hit. And this may not work, but get it to hit this area of his face a bit more. Actually, let me try and use the touch tool so that, let's see whether this works. I'm not really doing a good job trying to show you what I mean, but something like it didn't work at all. Sorry. Alright, let me try again. Okay. Bring that on top. So yes, this is completely inaccurate, but I think you get what I mean, just bringing that side of the face up, lifting it in the highlights a bit more. Alrighty, but I can see and I really appreciate the effort you put in iterating. The only, my final comment would be that your previous iteration of the key light, the hue of the key light, the sort of more magenta hue, I think is actually a better match to the reference than what you have currently. I feel like maybe you've gone too much towards the reds and the warmer hues for the key light. So maybe back off on that and take a look at your previous iteration. It feels like it's matching the reference better. Okay? But it's coming along really nicely. Good work. Alex, thanks for your update. I see now that you've swung the camera around and we have a similar camera angle and composition to the reference, and that'll go a long way to helping you match the reference. I'm wondering whether you could just delete this foreground elements and these things in the foreground here. I feel like it's detracting from getting us closer to the reference. In terms of the color of the key, I feel like you could probably crank it more towards a yellowish, kind of like a yellowish hue. So let's see. Actually, let me just make a copy of that. Something like that feels. Yeah, so highlights warmer, and also the areas in shadow in the reference. You'll see that here in the shadows we're getting blues and magentas. I'm wondering whether with your image, we're reading it on the plane here. I'm wondering whether you could get that more in the shadow areas on the wall here. Let's see. Let me try and do a quick sketch over that. I think I copied the wrong layer, sorry. Okay. I scribbled on, I always do that. I scribbled on the layer, didn't want to, I wasn't supposed to. Alright. So, if we could just get this area. You know, more like that as well, and you'll be wrestling with the bounce coming from the floor here. So you'll be getting quite warm bounce light coming from the floor. So you'll have to rebalance for that. Okay, but definitely heading in the right direction. Thanks, Alex. Okay, Apex goes down. We have an update. So I see you've boosted the key and also worked on the hue of the character, and that's coming towards, it's getting closer. I just feel like the only thing now is just to basically just back off on the saturation. So just desaturate your lights. And then I think you're there. Okay. Thank you. Sam, thank you for updating. I see that you've taken his hair away so we can match with Morpheus's bald head a lot better. And as you can see immediately that the highlight on Morpheus's head is a much broader highlight than what you have. I suspect that whatever light that you have, you might want to scale it up. I'm hoping that you're using an area light. So with an area light, you have, if you've got an area light hitting him, you could scale it up, make it bigger, so that it's hitting him and it's giving him like a broader highlight, like that. You can see on Morpheus, you can make out, highlights on his, on his chin. His nose. Let's try and get some of that into your scene. And it feels like the bounce from the sofa is hitting, the fill side of your character. So I'm wondering whether you could maybe reduce that, introducing a blocker or a piece of geo on this side to block that red bounce coming off the sofa onto his screen left side. Could be good, because I feel like it's definitely too much right now. We do have a little bit of reddish bounce light coming off the sofa for Morpheus, but his sofa is, I don't think it's as red, and directionally it's not hitting him as frontal as what you have it. So maybe try cranking the key around just slightly. Just crank it slightly so that the highlights maybe read. If this was where the highlight, the hottest part of the highlight is, maybe move it so it's maybe here, and then broaden it so that it runs down the side of his face. Okay, but definitely making great progress from your first iteration. I'm loving the sunglasses. See, you can try and match the highlight of the sunglasses on Morpheus. See if you can match these. You know, this highlight on his sunglasses. See if we can get it to read here. Okay, thank you. Mariee, thanks for submitting your project. You've got some great references there and you've made a great start. I see that you've taken quite a bit of time placing the lights, those fairy lights, and you've got some purple uplights coming that looks like it's emanating from the water. That's coming along really nice. And you've got a sort of a key light from behind the tree, similar to the reference, and that's illuminating the sort of the grassy areas behind and the back of the tree. I think compositionally, it might help to, again, and we're looking at the rule of thirds, it might help you to either center it like this, okay, like that, or you could, use the rule of thirds and maybe bring the tree to one side like that. That's too much. Let's try that again. Maybe like that. But yeah, completely up to you. The other thing I would mention is that your layouts looks very convincing in the background here. But I feel like this sparse foregrounds, it kind of gives the illusion away a little bit, because it does feel now that we're kind of in CG world rather than fairyland. I'm wondering whether, one thing, and this is completely up to you, is whether you could just compositionally just crop it out and then, have us be, in the lake at the edge there. Completely up to you. But if you were thinking of, maintaining, the foreground as you have, maybe you could clone. Here's my clone tool. Maybe you could clone, bits of the foreground here. Like that. Just to kind of maintain that illusion that you have this kind of lush landscaping all around the lake, the water. overall the lighting feels a little bit too filled. I mean, the fill light component, or the fill component, feels like it could go down. Just looking at this reference here, you can see that a lot of the time the tree trunk's actually in shadow. So I'm wondering whether you could maybe take a look at that. And maybe, bring down the shadow components. Oops, sorry. Yeah, what else? Saturation. I think overall the saturation could come down. In the reference, the saturation is a lot of the time in the highlights. So yeah, I'm thinking whether you could maybe maintain the saturation in the highlights and these fairy lights here, but kind of bring the overall saturation down on the image. And I think you'd be in a good place. Okay, thank you. Orash, I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. Your reference and your lighting. Directionally, you're in a good spot, and also the color of your lights is good. And even the fill areas here feel pretty good compared to the reference. If you look at the reference and the core areas of the face here where it's in shadow, you've got it pretty good. I would, my next step would be to try and to get the other elements in your scene to receive the same quality of lighting. So these guys here, instead of isolating that lighting to just that sphere, see how you go with introducing it to the other elements. Okay, but it's looking pretty good. Thank you. And Pete, we've spoken about this one and this one. And Miguel, we've spoken about this. All right, so I guess that's pretty much it for today. Do you guys have any other questions or comments?
I'm okay.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
No, nothing right now.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for tuning in this week, and yeah, hope to see you guys next week.
Yep. Thank you.
Sounds
All right.
good.
Thanks very much,
Thanks,
guys.
Quan.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.